Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Really glad to have this guy back. Former Army Ranger. The guy is amazing. He's running for U.S. Senate out of the great state of Arkansas. Former NFL player, former Arkansas star, Jake Bequette. Jake, how are you?
Hey, it's great to be on with you, as always.
You know, I'm not a military mind. You tell me that off the air all the time. Joe, you don't know anything. You don't know what you're talking about. But I'm a thinker. Jake, my 6-year-old daughter would have known not to take our military out of Afghanistan before we made safe harbor and safe haven for our men and women and for the Afghans that helped us. From a military mind, you're a former Army Ranger. You're a guy who's got years and years of experience doing this in Iraq, and you've got friends and partners over in Afghanistan now. What on earth were we thinking? This couldn't have been thought out, right?
Well, it doesn't take Sun Tzu to realize that you don't remove your military forces before you've evacuated all American citizens. This is an absolute disgrace. It's proven the incompetence of Joe Biden and his administration. It's an absolute betrayal of the American military and the citizens we've left behind, trapped behind Taliban enemy lines. It's an absolute disgrace, and I'm sure you've seen the breaking news just now. Joe Biden has committed to withdrawing military forces by August 31st, the deadline that the Taliban has dictated to him, by the way. The Taliban does not dictate timelines to the United States military. And so it looks like Joe Biden is abandoning thousands of American citizens in Afghanistan. This is an absolute disgrace and a betrayal of the American people.
I couldn't agree more. But I guess the question I have is you've got people like Milley, who I disagree with on the woke stuff, but he's a decorated general. You've got the Department of Defense, chief, who is not a dumb guy. How could we possibly have changed the plan that Trump had? I had former President Trump on last week. You may or may not know that. We had a long conversation, 18 minutes. His plan was to leave the military there, like anybody with a brain would do, get our men and women out safely, get those who helped us out safely. Jake, they're going door to door and killing Christians. They're going door to door, and they're killing those who interpreted for us. They're telling American citizens you can't get through the checkpoint while beating them up. Why on earth would we? Because I don't know how you undo it now. You'd have to send 30,000 troops in to re-secure Bagram. So what thought process in your military mind? You're a smart dude. What could they have been thinking? Any idea?
Well, I don't think the considerations were military because obviously tactically this makes no sense. I think it was a purely political calculation. I think Joe Biden was obsessed with countering President Trump's plans, no matter what they were, no matter how sound the plan was to begin with. I think he just came in there and thought, hey, if Donald Trump did this, I have to do the opposite. And so he changed the timeline. He changed the arrangements of the military guidance that he gave to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the Secretary of Defense, and that trickled on down to our commanders. Look, I just from reports that I've seen, even our American generals who are brigade commanders and higher, even they are giving guidance to their soldiers that makes no tactical sense. I just think it's total confusion on the part of the administration, and it starts at the top. That's my point. Look, at an army of lions led by a sheep will always lose. That's what we have right now. We have amazing soldiers at the junior officer and NCO level, and we have pathetic leaders and a pathetic president in Joe Biden.
It's former NFL player, former Arkansas star, Jake Bequette. Jake is, as you would expect, J-A-K-E. Bequette is B-E-Q-U-E-T-T-E. Go to jakebequette.com. He's running for U.S. Senate out of the great state of Arkansas. Jen Psaki yesterday said, in reaction to a question from Peter Doocy from Fox, there are no Americans stranded in Afghanistan. Jake, is she lying? Is she stupid? Does she not know? Of course, everybody on the planet knows there are stranded Americans there. She kept on saying, any American who wants to get out will be able to get out. We have no Americans stranded there. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's gaslighting of the highest order, but also this is the result of decades of lapdog treatment from Democrats towards the mainstream media. They know that, unless you're watching, your show, listening to your podcast, or watching certain conservative news outlets, then, the mainstream legacy media is going to give them air cover. And so they just continue to gaslight the American people, absolutely lie to their constituents. And look, I think it's really, even the mainstream media can't cover for this disgrace for Joe Biden. I'm sure you've seen his latest approval polls. They're absolutely cratering. He's
right.
Near 40%, down 20 points in a couple of weeks. Look, even the media, they can't even be the janitors on this job. He screwed it up so badly.
When George Stephanopoulos sat down with him, Stephanopoulos, by the way, is not a journalist. He's a Clintonista, but whatever. He's, for some reason, is the journalist at ABC News. When he sat down with him, he even said there were Afghans who were holding onto the side of planes and they were falling off to their death rather than stay with the Taliban. And Biden's reaction was, come on, man, that was 4 or 5 days ago. Like it's no big deal. Jake, I'm confused. Let me ask you something, and I know how truthful you are. Do you think Joe Biden's in charge? Do you think he's running the joint?
Absolutely not. I think it's been evident since the very beginning, even before he was elected, that he is an empty husk. He is simply, a man who is on puppet strings, being controlled by Democrat operatives inside the White House and in the federal bureaucracy. Look, he did his job from the leftist perspective. He did his job. He got elected, and now he's just being manipulated. He's obviously incapable of even answering a sustained barrage of legitimate questions from journalists before going back to sleep in his basement. He's obviously not in charge. And look, I think the ramifications of this go far beyond Afghanistan. This damages American prestige, not only domestically, but in the eyes of our sworn enemies, the Chinese Communist Party, the Russians, the Iranians, the North Koreans. It's just an absolute debacle, and this is going to have ripple effects for years to come.
It is Jake Bequette. Go to jakebequette.com. He's running for U.S. Senate out of the great state of Arkansas, and we love having you on. All right, give me your military input now. You're the military mind here in this interview. What do we do now? We can't undo. And by the way, Biden didn't follow Trump's plan. Biden lied, came out originally and said, I'm just doing what Donald Trump planned for. That's a lie. He had a bunch of executive orders immediately to stop the Keystone XL pipeline, stop our own natural resources, immediately get back into the Iran deal, which was ridiculous, back into the Paris Accord, open the border. He changed everything Trump did. So the idea that he had to follow what Trump said was a lie. But we can't undo what he's done. What do you do now? From the military perspective, do we have to put 30,000 back in just to save lives? What do we do?
Well, look, it's a difficult situation militarily. Obviously, Joe Biden has backed himself into a corner here. But look, the proper leader, a true wartime leader in the mold of a Winston Churchill. Look, in 1940, for the evacuation of Dunkirk, he did everything in his power to rescue the British Expeditionary Force. He launched fishing boats, civilian fishing boats in some cases. I'm not saying we should do that, but if the British SAS and French Special Forces are able to rescue their citizens, granted there are fewer of them in Kabul than there are Americans, but we surely can do that. We have highly trained special operations forces who their job, their main reason for existing is conducting airfield seizures. I think we are supremely capable of doing that. Look, make no mistake, I am not a fan of reinvading Afghanistan, starting from scratch like this was late 2001, early 2002. But I am saying we have options at our disposal, and it's certainly possible to rescue the thousands of American citizens without any regard for this arbitrary and stupid deadline that Joe Biden has allowed the Taliban to dictate to him.
Iraq war veteran, former NFL player. Also, he's challenging Arkansas Senator Boozman for a U.S. Senate seat out of Arkansas. It's Jake Bequette, jakebequette.com. What about this deadline? Let's delve into that a little bit more, because I at one point heard that the Taliban leader, that by the way Barack Obama released back in 2014 or whatever it was to get Bo Bergdahl back. Honestly, that's the guy who's in charge now of the Taliban. Somebody that Obama dealt back to the Taliban. What about that date? I originally heard that he said September 11th, which I was just completely cringed by. Now it's August 31st, and Biden appears to have said that we're just going to do that. Why not? If you were in charge and had the button, Jake, wouldn't you just blow up the palace? Let's kill some of these Taliban leaders and say, okay, can we get our people out now? What if we don't abide by it? What are they going to do to us? Start lining Americans up and we'll just take it? I mean, I'm so uncomfortable as an American who loves this country and watching what's unfolding. I mean, immediately we should have said, screw your deadline, right?
Exactly. We never should have agreed to that arbitrary deadline. That was a mistake in the first place. And to go back to your point, yes, I mean, it's no surprise everyone warned back in 2014 when we released several deadly, convicted terrorists from Gitmo. We knew exactly what they were due. Those terrorists should have been executed. We had the chance, every single one of them, publicly, in my opinion. But yeah, these are the consequences of Democrat failed leadership. And look, we have to take decisive action. That's all that I'm going to say. Look, it's not going to be pretty. Joe Biden has painted himself into a corner, and there are no good options right now. But when it comes to the two options of doing nothing and leaving American citizens to die at the hands of the Taliban, look, I mean, we're looking at a potential hostage situation that we've never seen before in American history. This would be way worse than the Iran hostage crisis of the late 70s and early 80s. Look, this is an unprecedented time in American history. We have to take bold, decisive action to rescue American citizens right now.
JakeBequette.com. Jake is Jake, Bequette, Bequette. Go to JakeBequette.com. He's running for U.S. Senate of the great state of Arkansas. As we're watching this unfold over there, Jake, when do you think we should have left? Should it have been 2004 when we wiped out the Taliban or minimized them, when we had their leader on the run, when we had Al-Qaeda was decimated? Should it have been when we got bin Laden? We should have left a long time ago. I've been saying that. I think that you feel that way too. Unless we were going to make it little America in the East, which we weren't ever planning to do. Why did we stay so damn long?
Well, I think the list of achievable goals after the initial success of American Special Operations Forces and the Northern Alliance in late 2001, early 2002, I think that list was very short. But unfortunately, under our leadership at the time, there was this notion, this idea that we could create this artificial Western-style democracy supported by a Western-style military structure in a failed Middle Eastern state.
Right.
Obviously, that goal was not achievable. It was not achievable then. It was not achievable 20 years later. I think at the very latest, we should have left after justice was done upon Osama bin Laden. But look, after we chased the Taliban into the mountainous region, the border region between Afghanistan and Taliban and Pakistan, excuse me, there was little that we could actually do in practical terms. And I think that's another area of focus that's been missed in this, is the danger of the nation of Pakistan. This is a nuclear power. They are led by radical Islamists. They have given aid and comfort to the Taliban since the very beginning of the U.S. involvement after 9/11. But I think, to answer your question, there were very few achievable goals after these successes of American SOF and the Afghani Northern Alliance led by Karzai in late 2001.
And I think that you're absolutely right. And in fact, the latest, as you said, got bin Laden, have a nice day. For centuries, people have been trying to put freedom, liberty, and democracy in Afghanistan. It has never succeeded because guess what? The people don't have the backbone for it. They don't want it. People are so used to being ruled by fundamentalists that they literally are welcoming them back. And those who helped, Jake, let me ask you this. Why would anybody help us again? As an Army Ranger, you have to make relationships with people. Why would anybody ever help us again? We turned our backs on the Kurds in the 90s. We're turning our backs on the Afghans now. I wouldn't help America if I were a foreigner in my own land, because the death sentence is there and it's hanging over your head when you leave me, when you get on your C-17 and leave.
Well, I think you're right. And in response to your first statement there, I think you're exactly right. Nation building has been proven to be a failure in countries that do not have a civil society that fundamentally underpins their culture. Okay, we can't want Western-style democracy more than the people of a nation want it for themselves.
Great point.
We've learned that lesson through hard experience in Iraq and Afghanistan. But look, to the second point, of your statement there, that's why I said this collapse in Kabul, this Afghanistan debacle, is going to have ramifications for years to come, unfortunately. Due to the signal that it sends to not only our allies, but our enemies. I mean, yeah. China. Look, China has always coveted Taiwan. They're looking at Taiwan, licking their chops right now. The Iranians, North Koreans, it wouldn't surprise me to see them make accelerated advances, aggressive moves in their nuclear weapons programs and capabilities. And of course, the Russians have always eyed several prizes in Eastern Europe they want to bring back under their influence. So look, the only guarantee of peace and security in our world is American military might. And when we have the empty husk of a president that we have right now, look, we're leaderless, and our enemies and our allies both know this.
Well, listen, China, Russia, North Korea, all the actors that you just mentioned, Iran, they now know this president won't do anything. They now know that, whereas the previous president said, oh, Syria, did you cross the line? Here are 57 missiles for you. I mean, that's a sea change in the White House, and the world knows it now. Jake, let's do this again very soon. JakeBequette.com. Bequette is Bequette, running for U.S. Senate out of the great state of Arkansas. Brother, I always appreciate your knowledge. Thanks a million.
Thanks. We'll see you again soon.
All right, brother. We're back after this. Stay right here.